Hi, I'm Yulia, and this is the News Brief, possibly the last one on this channel. And today we're going to be talking about how Russia is escalating its rhetoric in Eastern Europe, in Western Europe, and in Northern Europe, and what that means for the world and how we should be responding to it. And of course, we're going to discuss it together in the comments, so you don't have to suffer alone, and I don't have to suffer alone. So please, if you have anything at all to say, don't hesitate to do so down below. Let's go. Let's start with some positive bits, and that is Ukrainian Black Sea adventures. And by that I mean Ukraine has been striking Russian military infrastructure in the Black Sea. Ukraine has invented a bunch of different drones that are able to, cost Russia its fleet, which I'm going to come back to the early 2023 jokes and say that the country without a navy has completely destroyed Russia's navy. So Ukraine is continuing its series of attacks on Russian strategic objects in the Black Sea, and it starts with oil and gas infrastructure and ends with aviation in Crimea, which, in my humble opinion, is a very big deal. There has been a series of explosions that has been noticed by Russian citizens in various Russian cities, including Novorossiysk and Krasnodarsky Krai. There have been reservoirs, according to BBC, that have been deeply damaged by the Ukrainian military. In Novorossiysk in particular, there was an oil and gas terminal, which is non-functional anymore because it has been stopped due to the work of Ukrainian unmanned aerial vehicles, which again, Ukraine has been producing on its own, and that's a whole separate subject, and I'm pretty sure we addressed it in the previous news brief, and we're producing some new technology. It's very cheap, very good, and very easy and fast to make. In Krasnodar Krai, there has been a fire at a chemical plant after, again, the strikes from Ukrainian unmanned aerial vehicles. So if you are curious to know more about Ukrainian UAVs or drones, those are Bober and Magura, and they are our newest instruments of attack. Ukraine has been using them for these Black Sea attacks and for a lot of other things. But basically, Bober, which is an aerial system, has a range of 800 kilometers, and that is allowing Ukraine to get pretty deep in Russia, according to Euromaidan Press. And again, those don't require Western permission to be able to strike cities. We can decide on our own because it is our own technology. And then there are Maguras, which are sea drones, and Ukraine has come up with the concept and the execution of these. Well, maybe not the concept and the execution. There are a lot of innovations all over the world, but these have been produced and used by Ukraine for the first time, and they have been used to send Russian ships to where a famous Ukrainian warrior sent the other Russian ship. So those have been working out pretty well. Also, Ukraine was able to destroy some Russian aircraft and also radars, so early warning systems in Crimea. And that has been a really big deal because if you know, early warning systems are important for air defense, and we have AWACS, for instance, that lets us know, and Russia has their own planes, some of which we have destroyed priorly, and now we have destroyed even more, which means that Russia is kind of blindsided to Ukrainian attacks because there are no early warning systems. And Russia's losses in these early warning systems and aircraft reach up to $40 million. So that is quite a lot. And you know, word on the street is Russians are standing in lines for gas because they can't get it. Groceries are getting more expensive, and they're about to raise taxes. But yeah, sure, let's continue the war in Ukraine because that is the best use of Russia's already depleting resources. Now on to the actual subject of today's news brief, and those are provocations and escalations by Russia in European countries, because those have now left just Eastern Europe and entered Western and Northern Europe as well. There have been drones in Denmark and over the Baltic Sea, and we have talked about it in the previous brief as well. But basically, on September 22nd and 25th, there have been unidentified UAVs, and I mean we can identify them to Russia, that basically resulted in the closure of airports in Copenhagen and Aalborg, according to The Guardian. And that's a very big deal, because priorly, Russia has only really let themselves encroach on territories of Poland and the Baltic countries because, well, they don't have respect to Poland, for Poland or the Baltic countries. And those provocations were done to see if NATO has respect for these countries, because in Russia's playbook, they don't. But we saw that that's not the case, and Donald Trump himself, in a striking and shocking change of rhetoric, said that actually, if there are any aircraft or any UAVs or anything aerial or anything that's considered a threat to NATO territory, then NATO should take it down without thinking. So that's a very strong message to Russia that actually, yeah, we do care about these countries, and it doesn't matter what you do. We're just going to first take care of it and then talk about it. Then there was also a Russian aircraft that actually flew by the Bundesmarine frigate during the Neptune strike training. And that's according to Deutsche Welle. And that, again, is a provocation because that is a military training for German Navy. And Russian aircraft has no reason to be there. Meanwhile, Hungary is, as always, Europe's little, you know that one uncle that everybody absolutely hates but has to see on Thanksgiving? That's Hungary, and Hungary has been really playing its role really freaking well. Budapest is still incredibly dependent on Russian oil and Russian gas, and Budapest is still buying it in large quantities. And of course, they're, as per usual, delaying and sabotaging further sanctions on Russia, because that means that they would actually have to do what the rest of Europe did and diversify their gas and oil investments. But it's kind of hard to do when your entire political power depends on Russia. There's going to be a huge election in Hungary, and according to a lot of polls and a lot of Hungarians that I anecdotally know myself, so we're not necessarily going to stick to that, but we're going to stick to polls, Viktor Orbán potentially might lose that election to Péter Magyar. And Hungarians are excited. Magyar is actually a democratic leader. There might be change coming to Hungary soon, so we might need to stop villainizing them, so maybe start getting used to that. And Orbán and his family are quickly and swiftly sweeping up their assets, moving. His daughter and her husband already moved to the United States. Why would you do that if you have nothing to hide and you didn't do anything wrong in your massive tenure as a president? And of course, Orbán still continues on insisting that Hungary is excluded from the sanctions narrative and given a special status so they can continue funding Russia's war against Ukraine by buying their oil and gas. Now, if Hungary does stop sabotaging sanctions on Russia, that is actually going to be a huge blow to them because they are already economically struggling. All of those sanctions that I was talking about in the beginning of this brief are giving Russia's economy a run for its money because, again, we are destroying oil infrastructure, we're destroying gas infrastructure, we're destroying Russian Navy, we're destroying Russian radar, so they're losing millions and millions of dollars in their military weaponry and technology, and they're also losing millions and millions of dollars in export capabilities and in processing capabilities. Ural's oil has gone up 2.3% in prices after the attack on Novorossiysk, and that's according to Financial Times. And the processing of oil in Krasnodar Krai has temporarily been cut by whopping 12%. Now, Ursula von der Leyen and Trump are actually being quite surprising in all of this, and they are consolidating their rhetoric and starting to sound very similar, which, to be honest, is terrifying because Donald Trump using punctuation and saying realistic things about Ukraine that are true and encouraging is kind of terrifying. It's kind of like the devil starting to preach gospel. You know, that's pretty much how I see it. The European Union and the US are synchronizing their rhetoric as to the Russian provocations and the response to them. Ursula von der Leyen basically said that the option of taking down Russian aircraft in the European sky is on the table. And also they're talking about shooting them down on approach and really just having a direct protocol. And that's according to CNN. Meanwhile, according to Politico, von der Leyen even said that there should be a hotline with Trump after his statements to Politico and his recent rhetoric in support of Ukraine, saying that Ukraine can return all of its territory back, and saying that these aircraft and any sort of attack or threat to NATO should be immediately neutralized. But that brings us to the larger picture, which is the hybrid threat of Russia in Europe. There have been lots of fires at storage facilities, at industrial facilities in Birmingham, where official reasoning as to why those have been happening has not been yet specified and has not been yet found out, according to investigations and according to Sky News. Also, Polar Special Services have been warning about the Russian hand in similar circumstance. And we know that these hybrid attacks have been happening for the past 3.5 years, well, so outwardly, but genuinely since 1991. A lot of these things and a lot of these coincidences and a lot of these weird happenings have definitely been tied to Russia. And there is this thing that I talked to with one of my interviewees on this channel. And that was that, one of the reasons why it's so hard for the world to support Ukraine unequivocally is because the threat doesn't necessarily spread onto them. Because there are no Russian tanks in their cities, there are no Russian airplanes in their sky, there are no Russian drones blowing up their buildings. But that is now slowly changing. There are now Russian drones on territories of countries we could never imagine Russian drones to be. There are now Russian airplanes encroaching in military training. And here is the honest and hard truth. Russian tanks don't have to be rolling through your cities in order for Russia to invade you or meddle in your politics. We know that hybrid warfare has been done masterfully by Russia. Russia has been installing politicians. Russia has been sabotaging elections. Russia has been putting together narratives to divide countries. And those narratives have taken their own shape through the mouths and brains of people that consume them. And they have started creating their own unexpected problems that even Russia couldn't foresee. So the threat of Russia in your country is very real. Just because their tanks are not there and you cannot imagine a military invasion from them doesn't mean that Russia cannot sabotage you, your life, and your comfort. They have been doing it, and now they're doing it more rapidly. So this is the right time to act. This is the right time to act decisively, and this is the right time for all European countries to stand in solidarity and to put an end to Russia as a threat once and for all. That's all I have for you for today. Thank you for watching this news brief. I would say please like and subscribe and turn on all of your notifications, and of course send this video to a friend and leave me a comment or two. But I'm not sure about that. If you would like to continue seeing my reporting, then I have my own personal channel on YouTube, YEWLEEA. I also have a podcast called Unmasking, and you can find me there starting from next week. Thank you, and, well, I'll see you soon.